Welcome gamers to this chronology of Panzer Corps 2, and of course there'll be more coming in the future, but I thought I'd actually sort of just put together like a bit of a deep dive into what you actually get with the various base game plus the DLCs, plus where it came from, like the history, you know, like what was inspired from, etc., etc. So down in the very, very bottom, you'll sort of see like a chronology starting back in 1994, which has got nothing to do with Panzer Corps 2, but it does actually is where Panzer General starts, but we'll sort of talk about that in just a minute, and then we'll sort of move forward from there. My name is Dash Tactic. Welcome to the channel. Hope you enjoy this one-off video, really just going through the history of the franchise, what each of the DLCs brings, you know, what's special about it, what people liked, what they didn't like, etc., etc. Because there are some, there are some that, like most of them actually perform very, very well. People tend to love them, but there are a few that people didn't really particularly like. So we'll talk about that as well. I can just have it all out on the table. I do want to thank Slytherin for sponsoring this content. So thank you, Slytherin, yet again for supporting the channel. I really, really do appreciate it. And yeah, and again, this is a game that I've thoroughly enjoyed over the years, ever since it first came out. I know that it was very hard to develop, and I will talk a little bit about that as well when we get into it as well, because it's a big change actually to go from what was done, you know, in the first versions of Panzer Corps into Panzer Corps 2. Like, it's a massive, massive leap. So let's just go through it in the timeline, and we'll start way, way back in 1994 with Panzer General, when Panzer General was released. And you'll see in the timeline, I've actually sort of got like an aspect there where it's got like the name, when it actually came out, and also the score. So we're sort of seeing like that it was very, very well received, with a score of 90. And then a year later, in 1995, Allied General was then created as well. These were created by a company called SSI. SSI was long gone by the time that Panzer Corps 2, or even Panzer Corps 1, came into fruition. So I've just got a bit of a timeline here of these early days, early years. Then we sort of end up with Pacific General in 1997 on the 30th of June. Again, fairly well received. I enjoyed that one. Having, you know, living in Australia, it was sort of one of those games that I did enjoy. Panzer General 2, 83%. Again, fairly well received in 1997 as well, in September. People's General, I do vaguely remember that one. Vaguely remember it, but not much, to be honest. And then we had Panzer General 3D Assault. Less well received, 68% in through that one through there. Slytherin was then founded on the 25th of June 2000. So sort of like these games had been around for 6 years, 7 years before Slytherin even sort of started. And Slytherin didn't actually start with this with the Panzer Corps style games. In fact, probably more Matrix was sort of doing that, and they also sort of formed at around about that time. Okay, then we've got the Panzer General 3 Scorched Earth. Again, sort of we're seeing sort of numbers that are dropping for the original series. And then in 2002 is when the SSI brand fades after the Ubisoft era, essentially. So, you know, through purchases, etc., etc. So SSI is pretty much then gone from that point. Then we end up with a big, long period of nothing really much happening. There were other games that did come out, by the way, that sort of tried to emulate, I guess, the style of game that Panzer General actually did sort of already establish. I mean, I'm thinking of Battle Isle, like that was sort of a bit that way as well. These games, there was no random maps that I can remember. There may have been in some of them, but they weren't. They were pretty, like, if you play them again now, you're sort of thinking, oh, why am I playing this? Like, they're not great for today's era, and so it's interesting to sort of see what actually did happen through here. Anyway, through there was many years, decades really, before we then sort of start to sort of get, well, there's the Slytherin Matrix merge in 2010, and then we actually get Panzer Corps, and so this is actually in the 11th of June, 2011. The original Panzer Corps comes out, and so this is this spiritual successor to Panzer General. It was done in very much the same way as Panzer General, and I'm not going to spend too much time with the original Panzer Corps. We'll sort of spend most of our time in Panzer Corps 2. And I guess, like soon afterwards, really, that's when the Panzer Corps Grand Campaign DLC era begins. And this is something that people actually really did love about this original game, where different DLCs were then sort of brought through. So the original game sort of rating around about 80, which is good for these sorts of games. Like that's actually very, very high. Again, it was well received. So the Panzer Corps people, I think, had missed the old Panzer General by this stage, and were thinking, oh, here we go. We've got there's a few games that did come out that sort of felt like it, but I think that Panzer Corps really was the game that captured it well, and sort of then moved on from there. Then we've got Panzer Corps Africa Corps in 2012, 2013. We've got Panzer Corps Allied Corps. And then Panzer Corps arrives on the iPad in 2013, etc., etc. Panzer Corps Soviet Corps back and through here again in 2016. So the DLCs are sort of coming through relatively, sort of like with a bit of sort of space in between them. Then Panzer Corps 2 is announced with the Unreal Engine 4. And so this is actually in 2017. And there's a lot of work that has to go in. So the development team that was working on Panzer Corps had at that stage been really just working on, again, no random maps. It was all just purely, here's a scenario, it's a puzzle, you need to solve it with your combat forces. So it's very much, the scenarios were very much puzzle driven. They were activated, same as Panzer General, they were activated based on how close you got to different units, or when you hit a certain point in the map, it might be a line sort of like, secretly drawn by the devs, by the designers, I guess, of the actual scenarios to say, when you cross this line, we're going to then release these forces to come down. And so it's very much scripted. So there was a lot of scripting involved in all of these early games. But with Panzer Corps 2, I respect this so much with what the devs did, that they thought, look, we've got an Unreal Engine we can now start to use. We also should really start to look at taking it to the completely next level. And so instead of actually having the units scripted, they decided to actually add in, on top of the scripting, the ability for the AI to start to think and do things. And that's not easy. And so anyway, there's a few years in between the announcement and then finally sort of we start to get the... Panzer Corps Gold comes out with the original game and the DLCs. So this is actually the last of the actual original Panzer Corps that did actually come out at that point in time. And then Panzer Corps 2 releases in the 19th of March 2020, so a month and a half after Panzer Corps Gold. Yeah, so Panzer Corps Gold, original game and all the DLCs sort of bundled together. Anyway, Panzer Corps 2 is then released at that point. Now, there's about 60 scenarios in the original game. So it's a pretty massive game. In fact, there's so much that goes on in this game. It is phenomenal. You've got the different, in fact, if I go into new game and just sort of show what it does actually have in the campaigns, these are all of the actual campaigns you then get to play in this particular, all these Wehrmacht campaigns. I'm going to mispronounce these sorts of things. So you got Poland in 1939. This is always from the focus of the German forces. And so these 5 campaigns, like 60 different scenarios across the 5 campaigns. Sorry, I keep on getting phone calls. Anyway, so these Wehrmacht campaigns, 60 scenarios, or about 60 scenarios in total. You've got North Africa as well. You've got Kursk in through here, and then you've got Italy in 1943, sort of coming up through, sort of starting in Sicily and then sort of working your way through. But these campaigns, they do cover Poland, France, the Balkans, North Africa, sort of like the Barbarossa and the Western Front. So you're getting a lot of different scenarios mixed in with the actual game itself. So, pretty cool what you do get with the base game, to be honest. And right now, until close to the end of May, like a few days inside the end of May, so just a bit over a week at time of recording, you're going to have 60% off the base game. So if you haven't got it, you may want to grab it. It's an incredible game, and as I said before, rates incredibly highly. So and even higher with the in recent times. So they keep on making improvements to the base game, and people love it. Actually, you can still see it here. Like if when I click on Poland 1939, this is like the Grand Campaign. So it's basically years covered, 1939 to 1945, 20 to 23 scenarios, depending on what you do. Barbarossa, 1941, goes from 41 to 45, 14 to 17 scenarios. North Africa, 14 to 17 scenarios in through there again as well. Kursk, again, 43 to 45, a bit smaller, 7 to 8 scenarios. And Italy is also 7 to 8 scenarios there. So a lot of content that you actually do get. And also, there's a few other little things that I loved the idea of. This is actually something that really, actually you got in standalone scenarios as well, like, coming in. And now some of these have been added in with the Slytherin 25th anniversary. So a few little extras, mainly geared around where the offices of Slytherin are located, which is sort of fun. But you're ending up getting a few of these sorts of historical things coming through, fictional things coming through as well. Not all of these will have come from the original game, I don't think. I can't remember which ones actually were original and which ones weren't. But the thing that I really like about this game is actually the random scenarios. And it's worth showing this because it is brilliant. You've got different map types. Now, you've got 5 map types: continent, coast, big island, big lake, and lakeland. And these then create like very different sorts of ways of playing the game. There was another one which they don't talk about, which I will talk about here. There was actually one of islands where the idea was that you would actually be able to island hop using forces that could then go into landing craft, but it was too difficult to sort of put into the game, so it never actually made it into the final game, but it was in the original. And I think there used to be a way that you could trick it into still playing it that way, and I can't remember what it was. I found a way to do it. This is back when the game first released. I love this game, by the way, but it's just, I was impressed with it when I saw it. But so there was 6, there's now 5. If I go to Lakeland, for example, you've got different map sizes in through here again as well. You've got mission types, which is, again, pretty cool. So free-for-all, survival, attack, and defense. So depending on how you sort of want things to happen. Free-for-all is everyone's against each other. Survival is actually not all the way. If you go free-for-all, I think that you can... There's some way of changing it so you end up getting different teams. Like, you've only got 2 teams if it's an attack factor in through there, and defense is 2 teams as well. So there is different ways of playing these random scenarios. Now, why is this important? The reason that this is important, and this is what I love about, again, what the devs have done with the game, is they had to really start from square one to be able to build a game where the AI could play against you. And so that was not the case with any of the previous games. Panzer Corp, Panzer General, they're all just purely scripted. So this is a massive undertaking to have done this at the time. And you can see why, 3 years of development basically to end up with what we get is fantastic. So again, I really appreciate the effort that was put into not just making it into a scripted scenario game. It really is a game that combines scripting along with actual AI thinking through their best moves, and so and I think that's what makes the game so special. Is that just those little bits and pieces that they've put in, and I'll cover a lot of these in this first part of this presentation because they've done a lot of really cool innovations with the game. Anyway, if I just go to free for all. Choose your year, 1941, 1942 is sort of quite often an interesting one. You've got up to 6 players that you can sort of play with, depending on the year. Like if I go to 1943, how many players I've got? Still 6. I think you can do more than that. 39, there's still 6. Actually, is it 6 or is it more? No, it's not more. Oh, you know what it is? I think it is if I go back to there. No, it's still 6. I don't know why there's 8 down in here then. Anyway, it might be for other areas. If we go to survival, that's still 6. No, I don't know. I don't know why there's 6 here and 8 here. So no idea. I've never really thought about that before. But you can play with any sort of number of forces that you want to then be playing with. If I just sort of play with 4, for example, it does sort of knock them out a little bit at the back through there. So depending on what year you play, like if I go to 1941, you'll then actually have the different protagonists that were sort of fighting at that time. So you've got Germany, Great Britain, USSR, and Italy. If I go to a different era, 1939. We're looking at, we've got the inclusion there of Poland. So Poland is one of the forces that becomes available in the latter years. USA, for example. So we're getting different sorts of forces coming through at different times, depending on when we sort of play the game. And you've then got your sort of like random selection. Now, I always liked playing as a German simply because Panzer Corps was focused from the German perspective for so long. But in reality, every single faction has got their pros and cons. Now, the weapons are not historical sort of representations of exactly what the weapon did. They've been tweaked for balance, so just be aware of that. The game has got it is a game first and foremost. It's not actually a historical simulation. But if I go and play this one, I'll just go and pump the difficulty up a little bit and just go into, in fact, even before I go in, I will actually talk about some of the extra things that you then do get with the game. If I go into advanced options, there's a lot in here that is really, really cool. And so the main one that I love, and I just don't know why other games don't do this, they've got combat randomness. So by using the slider, you can adjust combat randomness to your taste. 100% is a real result. So it's a result where RNG does not kick in at all. It's all based on the numbers, all based on coming down to your initiative, your attack power, the defense you're going up against. All those different things then play a role. So there's no surprises if you play with essentially 100% real determined by the combat rules and formulas. So combat randomness, if it goes back down, it should be 0 there. It's a bit different. 0 combat result is, so 0% combat result is always as predicted. And 100% is basically it's still got the predictive abilities, but with an RNG component to it. So most games are set here and don't give you the option, and they do your head in because you feel like you're always being diddled by the dice rolls. By default, this one's 50-50, so you're always going to get if you're overpowering a unit, you're always going to do fairly well with that. I think the default is 50 anyway. I like it on 50. It feels good. So there's still a little bit of random component to it, but there's also a lot of baseline component to the way it sort of does work. It's an incredibly good mechanic. It's simple, but it actually is just so brilliant. And again, you can choose how you want to play the game. Basically, undo mode. You can sort of undo any action. You can actually disable if you don't want to have undo. But anyway, you can have how many you have per turn as well. So again, you've got like a lot of choice and a lot of control over how you want the game to be for you and when you play it. Commander trait points. This is something where you can actually decide, how many of these trait points you actually want to have. To be honest, 2 is good. You don't want too many. I mean, you can have too many if you want, but it just gives you a bit of an advantage. I will talk a little bit about that. I think that this could certainly be tweaked better in the actual game. I mentioned it in yesterday's video or the day before, whenever I released this one, where I was talking about the commander trait points just being a little bit too wild when you do get them, because there's negative traits you can use as well. And I think that the negative traits, when you randomize things, it is just crazy. So there should be another slider on that screen to dictate how many of the negative traits you're willing to take, and rather than just letting it do its own thing. That's something I think could be improved. You got a weather system as well, and this has a big bearing on all sorts of things in the game, but particularly with your aircraft. Supply as well. This is actually really important as well, like to be able to cut off enemy forces, and then actually just that way you don't have to attack them immediately. You can essentially just let things happen where they start to degrade. So if checked units will consume fuel and ammo when moving or fighting and will require resupply. Resupply happens automatically unless some factor prevents it, example encirclements. And so encircling the enemy becomes a feature of the game. And again, if you don't like playing with that, just turn it off. Fog of war, again, just so you can't see what the enemy's up to. The Shroud, this is mainly if you're playing play by email, so not play by email, it's the hot seat mode, because you can play hot seat, by the way, in the game. And so Shroud, if checked at the beginning of a mission, the map will be covered by a shroud hiding both units and terrain. As you scout the map, Shroud will be gradually removed. So it's sort of, but this one, I think maybe I've got that one around the wrong way. But anyway, that's sort of this one. Actually, I guess that is like in this case, the map is not. I'll just forget what I just said. This is where the map is hidden as well. Turn limits. This is actually a big thing that's just come in very recently. So turn limit is well, not that they got turn limits because it always had a turn limit, but turn limit is a classic feature of Panzer Corp, which requires a player to carefully plan a strategy in order to complete all objectives in time. However, if you're not comfortable playing with a hard turn limit, you can turn it off here. And so this is something like for these random maps, I do recommend that you turn it off because you don't know what you're going to get. So having a hard set turn limit, it can be very debilitating. By turning it off, you also then get a few other little things if you are playing with any of the DLC. Some of the DLCs honour this, particularly the more recent ones, which is actually really cool. So if you don't like having the hard turn limit to do different things, turn it off. And you'll find that with the recent DLCs, they'll, as I said before, they'll honour the ability for you to play as long as you like. You've got awards down through here again as well. If checked, your units will earn awards through the course of the game. Each award improves the unit stats or gives it some new abilities, which is, again, cool. Even in these random maps, that will actually happen. Iron Man, this is basically where you only have access to one save file, so you can't actually go and save scum. I love save scumming, by the way. If you watch any of my content, you'll sort of know. You'll know that. But anyway, so Iron Man is if you don't want to be save scumming, essentially. If you're just going to, whatever happens is whatever happens. And look, to be honest, when you play the game, you'll sort of find that often there'll be aspects about the game that actually is like where it does, what am I trying to say here? The puzzle aspect, sort of like often you'll be restarting anyway, to be honest, just to get past the scenarios, because they are set up in a tricky way sometimes, where you may sort of think that you need a certain force and then find, oh my God, they've actually completely countered that force. I needed to have gone in with infantry instead of tanks or something like this. So anyway, it's quite often, and look, to be honest, part of the fun of the game is puzzling your way through it and figuring out the best way past different aspects of the game. They've got special challenges. These can be quite difficult. This one here, if you do have the time limit, this one the turn count in every scenario is reduced by 5, which is really a hell of a lot. And so this one came from the original Panzer Corp. The challenge is similar to the Guderian difficulty in Panzer Corp. David versus Goliath, so all enemy units get +5 strength, so again makes them difficult. Again, you can tweak these, depending on how you want things to then go and work. So they've added a few of these over time. Heroic Showdown, so this one here, you've got at the beginning of the battle, each enemy unit on the map is assigned one or more random heroes, which is interesting. And then you've got the showdown count, how many heroes each enemy unit will get. This should be up to 3. Actually, it's got up to 5. I thought you could only have 3 per unit. Limited stock, and so units that are usually available for purchase in unlimited numbers will have a limited stock instead, increased at the beginning of each scenario. So limited stock size, so again you can just have like a smallish number of replacements. So again, interesting. Mortal heroes, so so heroes attached to a unit have a certain chance to die in combat every time the unit takes damage. Bit difficult. There we go. Chance of death, again, it sort of goes from up to 100% down to 1%, defaulting on 3%. It's interesting the way it does work. And so anyway, a lot of these are available for the DLCs and the different campaigns that you can then go and play. So if I go and play, actually, this one here, a slightly more challenging level. You get less prestige. Prestige is what you need to spend to get more units. And so if you're playing at this difficulty here, it's all just even. This one here, you get the bonus of getting things. But in this case, in general, you get less prestige. This one you get 60% less prestige. Plus the enemy units get a plus 10% base accuracy. And then for the Generalissimus, only the best of the best will beat this level. This is negative 80% prestige for you and 20% base accuracy for the enemy. So you again have to be really, really careful if you're playing with these higher difficulties. If I just go and play, the game will then just go and generate a random map. And we then are sort of into it, really, like with whatever faction we ended up sort of getting. Now, the faction will buy the units for us at the start, but you don't have to accept that. And again, we've got this is where you choose your elements. I would never recommend randomize. I wish that there was a slider here of how many negatives you're willing to take from 0, up to, like I think more than about 3 or 4 is getting a bit too much, but just randomizing would be cool if you could actually have it so that you didn't actually accept certain negatives. And so if I click on randomize, what have we got through here? 1, 2, that's not bad. Only got 2 of them. And so that it will then sort of choose random positive ones as well. If I unclick that one and do another one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now this would be possibly unplayable once you've got that sort of number. So this is actually something that I wish that the game had more control for the player over, because randomizing these is quite tricky. I literally just default pretty much to infantry general, just so I can get more slots there available for infantry, and just accept it. And so this one here, we're playing as the Soviets with what's going on in this particular run. We would then have like various tanks and things that would then come through. I won't go through how to play the game, but this is sort of like the Lakeland map, random map, where we can see that there's certain starts. So the Germans are started over through here, the Italians back over this way, and the Americans down this other side. And so the lakes then form areas where there's massive choke points. So you then have to sort of try to get in and sort of control the various choke points. The user experience and user interface in the game is really exceptional. Like it really is next level. It's beyond pretty much any other sort of war game. I always refer to this as a really, really cool entry-level war game, but not because it's entry-level means that it's dumbed down. It's not. It's just accessible. So the accessibility of the game for players is really, really cool. Like for players to be able to get an understanding of how war games work. It's not a true war game. Like it doesn't sort of try to accurately sort of give you his historical simulations like some war games do. Thinking of sort of like big games like War in the Pacific and games like that, where it takes days to do one turn. This one's much more accessible, but there's so many little options that they give you again to tweak the game so that you either have tools that help you sort of decide on what to do. I'll just get that out of the way. But the game itself, again, just over time has really just improved and improved. But it even started off just so beautiful with what they'd actually done. So, for example, if I go and have a look in through here, I can always just flick this strategic mode on, and I can then sort of see very clearly what's where. Like I've got swampland in here. I don't want to be in swampland because that's going to be a vulnerable position. So I want to be attacking into swampland, not defending swampland. So that becomes nothing much. Rivers are the same. Rivers are also going to have a vulnerable position. Hills are different. The hills are actually a strong position. So this is a high ground giving us an advantage. So in here, for example, the Germans have got swampland in through this other side. They'll be rushing to try to get to this point. There is actually an airfield there as well. And so for us, we would need to try to get across these rivers and defend here through this particular location, or fall back to here. So it's again strategically, it's a very pure game with sort of how you then sort of operate. You then have to be thinking, what are we going to do? We've got forest in here. This is going to be very, very good for infantry, not good for tanks. If there's big open fields anywhere, then fields would sort of be the thing. Like big open terrain like this is ideal for tanks, but really everything else around it. Rough is not too bad for tanks. Hills are not good for tanks. Forest is not good for tanks. So this particular game would be a tricky one. I mean, this one here, just infantry packed in along here, a way of defending this city back and through this other side, and then expansion away from these swamps across into this direction in through here, for example, would be probably the way you'd be thinking of actually prosecuting this particular fight. If you could get to this hill line, that would be very hard for the Germans to break through. So you may be able to get some extra points by capturing those if you could get there. You'd have to go along this road to sort of be able to secure that. And there is actually a road that goes all the way through, but every random map is quite different. So you'll sort of see random, lakeland, medium, FFA, free for all. It's great. It's a great game. Actually, this is my favourite way of playing the game. Anyway, I won't spend too much time with this, but I was going to talk a little bit about some of the other options. When you get started, you've actually then got all sorts of different things you can do with the game as well. So you've got like graphic quality, etc., all the way in through here, gamma correction. So you've got a lot more control over the look of the game than most other sort of particularly war games. War games are terrible with this. Audio aspects as well. Hotkeys, you can sort of censor your different hotkeys. You can re-change those. Again, war games don't tend to do that. They tend to have their own way of doing things and then make it difficult for you to change. This is really cool. This is the display user interface. This is definitely user experience, just taking to next level stuff. Your scrolling speed, you do see that in some games. Show the hex grid. You can either turn the hex grid on or off. Underneath it, the hex grid strength, you can sort of go it so that it's very, very strong or very, very weak. I think I tend to have it around about 33% or something. But even the actually, I'll just get back. Sorry, just go back out and resume the game, and I'll just zoom in a little bit just so you can sort of see it. In fact, if I just press the number 5 key, we then sort of see the grid underneath what we're actually looking at through there. So if I go back and press escape, options, the user interface, we can sort of see it off to the side here. But even the grid patterns, you've got different ways of actually setting your grid up. So you've got like a very narrow grid. I'll just get the strength up so you can see it. Where the hell is it? I can't. Oh, there we go. You can just see it. It's like a very, very thin line. Yeah, if I go and grab another one, you've got just in the corners there. I just love that they've done this, thinking it through. Dots in the corners, a bit hard to sort of see it there. I'll bring that up so you can sort of see the dots more clearly. What else have we got? We've got a heap of them. You've got big dots in the middle with little dots around the outside. You've got, where are we? Triangles. I don't know why you would use triangles, but anyway, you can if you. Well, I guess the center points are the edges of where things actually do go. Triangles with dots, so you can see the middle there. I don't know anyone who would play with these on, to be honest. Bigger dots, asterisks. Anyway, it's just heaps and heaps. You can sort of see it there. So depending on how you want these to sort of then operate. Rounded sort of corners there as well. It's just heaps and heaps. They've like just gone over the top with their with what you can have to really personalise it for how you want it to be. I like the thick one, which I think is just the default. Actually, that's the thin. Where's my thick one gone? Is it down the bottom here? That's it. That's one I like, and then knocked it back down to about 33%, just so I can just see it. Anyway, you get the idea. It's just next level in terms of user experience. Strength plates. These are these little things over through here, so I can sort of change. This is you can turn them on or off. So you want them on, basically. You do want them on, and then you can change the size to sort of get them where you want. I'll just put them down to 100. And similarly, the hex markers, so you've got the different hex markers there again as well, which I think are maybe, I'm not sure what they refer to be honest. Anyway, that's haze effect. Yeah, I'm not seeing that. I'm not sure what that relates to. I don't know what that is. Anyway, you've got a lot of things you can personalize with the way that you then go and play the game. Weather effects, different sorts of things in through there, disabled, subtle or strong, depending on how you want to play. There's just so much. Terrain as well, different ways of sort of getting the 3D elements to so you can sort of get exactly what you do want. So sun height, you'll see the shadows change as I sort of tweak these things around a little bit. So I'll just keep that one sort of back. I'll just get default back to where it was. Is that default? Not sure. If I go there. No, it's not doing the default back that way. Anyway, that's sort of where you can just sort of tweak the overall look of how things do work. The units as well, just how you want things to position. I won't go through all of it. There's a lot there, a lot more than what you expect with the way that the game can be played. So I'm going to go back to the main menu, and I won't go through all the different bits and pieces, but essentially there's about 1,000 different unit models you can play with in the game. Maps can exceed, can get up to very, very large sizes, like over 100 hexes by 100 hexes. There's been other things, for example, as well. Like, of course, it's a big departure moving from 2D sprites up to 3D. So again, a lot of effort put into the development of this game to make it, into what it actually is, and no wonder it sort of does rate as highly as it does, as you can sort of see down below there. It's just an amazing game. You've got you do actually have hot seat support as well. Like if I go into multiplayer, I can go either hot seat mode or play by email or online, etc. So there's different ways of playing the game. They've just really done everything they can possibly do to make it special for the player. And again, I so applaud what they've done. I hope that I've spent a fair bit of time talking about this, but it's just, for me, it's so important to see the effort that Dev has put into making the game as friendly for the player as he possibly can. And this is even things like, for example, being able to turn the turn timer off and allow players to play it their way. I just so love that they do that sort of stuff, because many developers won't. Many developers will say, I've designed this game to be played this way, and even though you hate playing it that way, too bad, that's what you've got. And so I love it when I see a developer who actually will take on board what some players want. Not all players, because it's an option you can turn on or off. It's not a base game thing. They've given us the option. You can turn the turn timer off if you want to. You don't have to. It's up to you. Love it. Anyway, let's get into the various DLCs and sort of go through that part of the history. Now, the first big part of the DLCs was following what they call the Axis operations, which is essentially from the Axis perspective, different scenarios that were driven certain ways. And if I just sort of scroll down on my timeline here, we'll sort of see that after Panzer Corp 2, which again rates 86, rates over 90 in recent times at time of recording, we've got the first one in through here in July of 2020, so just a few months, is Axis Operations Spanish Civil War. This one only rates at 54, so people didn't love this one. But it's anyway, it's 16 scenarios. It's essentially from 1936 is really when it sort of is operating, and really just covers the Condor Legion in Spain. It introduces different veteran core systems into the game as well. Some of the developments that have come through the DLCs end up sort of in the base game as well. So there's innovations all the way through as the DLCs do come through. Smaller maps in this particular one than what you sort of find in some of the other scenarios, and more the focus on infantry support and tactical air power, more so than big Panzer armies sort of rolling through different areas. And it also does include like prototype equipment and things like that. So it's sort of introducing a few ideas. I quite like this one. I do like the smaller maps, to be honest. I like the ability to be able to play a game relatively quickly, even though I play extremely slowly. It's still, I do prefer the smaller maps rather than the larger maps. Then we actually go into almost bouncing like that's July. Then we're in August, and we actually then got the Axis Operations 1939. This was much more better received at 70%. So which is about sort of where you'd expect DLCs to sort of end up being, really. And so this one was 15 scenarios, really covering the invasion of Poland, introducing sort of like branching objectives and campaign outcomes, essentially. So you're ending up with variants with what you end up doing there. In fact, what I should do is I should show these in the actual game itself. If I just go to new game and go to the campaigns and show you actually in here where they actually end up. So the Wehrmacht campaign is essentially all of the base game content that you end up getting. As we sort of come back down, we've then got the Axis operations. So Spanish Civil War, we are looking here at the Spanish Civil War has begun. Nationalist Spain calls for aid, and Germany answers by sending in the Condor Legion. So in this particular one, we've got the years covered from 36 to 39, 14 to 16 scenarios, depending on how you end up sort of breaking it through there. Not sure what the experience cap is, 2.5 stars. Maybe that may be difficulty, like maybe it's just not that difficult. Maybe that's why I enjoyed it. I don't know. Anyway, that's sort of where that one actually is. Then Axis Operations, we just speak about this one here as well. This is just covering 1939, 13 to 15 scenarios, depending on the branching and what you choose to do. Experience cap there of 3 stars. There must be difficulty, I'm guessing, or sort of like how experienced with the game you sort of should be before you take it on board, I guess. But in this case, while the Allies continue their policy of appeasement, Germany is only emboldened by annexing its neighbours. Will Czechoslovakia finally be the end to Germany's ambitions, or will it just be another part of the fuse burning towards the powder keg of world war? So essentially this is the start of the war. with a few scenarios, mainly sort of focused on Poland and sort of I guess the initial expansions. We've then got the Axis Operations 1940. I can't see it clearly in the timeline. Just bear with me. Yeah, rating very, very highly there. So we're sort of getting into where the people are enjoying the actual game itself. This is still in 2020. They're like in December of 2020. So the scenarios and the DLC is sort of certainly coming thick and fast at this point in time. And so this one really covers like scenarios, from Scandinavia across through the Low Countries, into France, those sorts of areas. So this is really sort of like, I guess there's a fair bit of interest, with different people sort of playing it from here, which I guess sort of drives those scores up. But people did really enjoy this DLC, the 1940 DLC. Then we go into 1941. It's just at the start of 2021, so 80 years away from historically what actually did happen through here. This rates incredibly highly, about 90%, which is really, really cool for something like this one. In this case, we've got 17 scenarios. The experience cap is much higher. I guess people do appreciate the it becoming more difficult to play. So after Western Europe so quickly falls under Axis occupation, Germany is dangerously emboldened to break the non-aggression pact with Russia and invade the Soviet Union, but precious time must first be spent securing the Balkans to deny Britain any chance to return to the fight in Europe. But this one actually does, it's the Barbarossa campaign focus with this one in through here. This has actually got like some very, very large maps in what it actually does do. You're looking at encirclement operations, etc., with the way that you then go and play this particular DLC. Certainly much more focused on the attacks through into Russia at this point in time as well. So the supply pressure becomes much more important in this particular DLC. And I guess sort of like, one of the things with this as well is that you start to sort of notice that there's changes to the base game. Like we start to see the scale change in the way that the maps are presented. And again, I quite like that they've done that over the course of time. When I showed, if you watched yesterday's video on just the Italy DLC, the Italy Volume 1 DLC, I did sort of show the original Sicily map compared to what we play on now, where the scale is improving and sort of narrowing in. And so we start to sort of see the start of that happening right now. Then we have, of course, 1942, rating 81. Again, very high for a DLC. This one came out in July of 2021. And so this one's got, between 15 and 17 scenarios. It does cover 1942. Operation Barbarossa has ended in strategic failure. The Soviet Union has not been knocked out of the war. Exhausted German forces now face the threat of Soviet winter. Blah, blah, blah. Now need to sort of work their way through. So you've got essentially the Stalingrad and the Caucasus operations with this particular one. Ends up, it's sort of, you've got sort of like a larger attrition type battles in through this other side. You've got like the logistics plays a bigger role in how you need to then sort of play it as well. You've got different so you sort of like a big open areas in the maps. So the maps sort of change again with what does sort of go on. And you've got a mix of all sorts of different terrains that you then got to fight across with your group. And again, the experience cap now is up to 5 stars, so it's becoming more difficult. And so you're ending up with getting such more elite forces coming into the actual fight as well. So you're starting to sort of get like the bigger tanks, the more impressive tanks that do sort of come into the mix. Let's scroll our timeline forward here, back up to July of 2022. We have Panzer Corp. This one here, rate 72. This is Axis Operations 1943, and so this one here is again just continuing on essentially what had happened there. 16 or between 12 and 17 scenarios back and through that other side. Years covered, just 1943. So in this case, you're mainly sort of talking about the Battle of Stalingrad is over, but for the German force that survived the debacle, the struggle continues. What else you got in through here? You've got Kursk is sort of like the features in this particular one. You've got defensive campaigns essentially that you're trying to play through in this instance. Resources are more scarce. So anyway, preserving your veterans becomes much more of a feature of this particular DLC. So again, you sort of see them string along, but they're all self-contained. You don't have to buy like you can buy whichever ones you are of interest to you, and it may be that you don't really want any of these. You may want some of the other ones that follow later on. It's they're not sequential, like so you can sort of, I mean, they're sequential chronologically, but not in terms of the actual campaign elements. So it's not as if you bring your forces from one DLC to the next one, but you do progress through as you do play the actual different campaigns. So we end up sort of now with back in November of 2022 with the release of Axis Operations 1944, and we see there 65. This is probably sort of under par, for what we'd sort of be looking for back in through here. The outcome of the Battle of Kursk has set the stage for the dawning of 1944 and defeat the German forces across the Eastern Front, hammered by Soviet counterattacks, etc., etc. And so you've ended going up 1944. You've got between 10 and 20 scenarios, depending on how they sort of do branch with everything that sort of is going on in this instance. You do actually also then start to play the Normandy campaigns through this one as well. So it's not just all focused on the Eastern Front. You do start to sort of now get the Western Front as well. So anyway, you've got a whole heap of different stuff into that particular one when you do start to sort of play it. Again, I guess it sort of now becomes more Allied focused, but again, still more defensive from the Axis operations. You are playing still a very, very defensive campaign, essentially just trying to hold on. That's why I think the early ones, like the 1940, 41, even into 42, rate higher than these ones because you're doing more attacking in those particular versions of the game. Yeah, then in June of 2023, we see Axis Operations 1945. So this one is sort of, again, defensive with the essentially with the Germans sort of now holding on to the last portion of the actual game itself. And again, you've got between 9 and 18 scenarios, depending on how you branch them off, with different sorts of things sort of kicking in, and again, sort of fighting all over the place with what's coming through. Apparently this is actually quite a difficult one to play. Like it sort of does, require a little bit of expertise to be able to then go and play this particular one. And of course, what you then also have with this one as well is we're getting like 70% is which is for me is about par. So I'm thinking that DLCs, I like seeing any base game that's a war game that rates over 80, I think is doing very, very well. 70% often for these sorts of games is around about where you sort of find its average. And so in this case, this one does rate at 70. And then you have Axis Operations 1946, which just followed. It seems like it's just so short time ago, but anyway, this one is completely like alternate history. And so this one here is the invasion of the USA. And it's funny because it didn't rate that highly, but I quite like the idea of this one. So after a long and ferocious war across Europe, peace has fallen upon the continent once again. Great Britain has been completely isolated and a temporary armistice has been made with the Soviet Union. However, one final opponent remains, the mighty United States. Unable to cross the Atlantic Ocean, Germany instead used its vast conquest in the east to link up with its Japanese ally. And together the two Axis powers ready themselves for Operation Olympus, the invasion of the United States. And so this one covers 1946 to 1947, 27 to 30 scenarios. So like a fair few scenarios that we sort of see in through there. We start to see super weapons coming in now, like the various Wonderwaffe super weapons, etc., into this particular one, prototype jets and so on in the mix. So we're sort of seeing a bit more wild and wonderful sort of stuff. I guess it might be, for the purists, it might just be a little bit too alternate in terms of what it's covering. But again, I quite like the idea of this one. Very large late maps as well, like in terms of the actual maps themselves, they're very large scale. So anyway, it really is sort of much more of a fantasy / alternate history sort of look to finish off the Axis Operations. And from there, if I just go back to the timeline, then in March of 2024, we actually get a bit of a departure away from the standard sort of way that the campaigns and scenarios were driven within the game itself. This one only rated 66% basically in terms of its the reception. Again, I quite like the idea of this. If I go to new game and go to campaign, so we go as we go back down through these, we've got the Axis Operations, which is where the main focus was originally. Then it comes back up to these frontline campaigns, which are sort of much more close-knit, intimate battles. So the first one is the Battle of the Bulge, back through here. And so in December 1944, US Army units in the densely forested Ardennes region between Belgium and Luxembourg are surprised by a major German offensive which aims to split the Allied front across the Meuse River and might even reach the vital port of Antwerp. Can you stop the enemy onslaught? And so this one here, you're now playing as the Americans. So we actually end up with a completely different sort of process in the game, like other than the random maps, of course. And so it's the winter of 1944-45, and there's between 9 and 12 scenarios. And again, if I just click on that one, I'll just go and click on play, just so you get a bit of a feel for it. This one is, again, got a lot more smaller detail with the actual way that the maps are then presented. And so it's worth having a bit of a look. I won't spend too much time with the with the setups and stuff, but it's essentially just going through what the plan should be. Again, I like that they've been able to really put so much into the presentation. Don't know if it works if you press number 5. No, it's not going to do that just yet. So we have different objectives that we then need to go and do with everything. So we just end the briefing. We have heroes that we need to sort of then be able to add in with what they can then go and do. Let's go next. So I've got a few different heroes for us to add in to the actual different groups. Of course, you then need to sort of choose them as you go. We're sort of seeing like slightly winterized forces coming back into the actual mix itself. But the actual map is much, much more, like it is more, the scale has now sort of gone right down. And I love the idea of these. So again, when I sort of look at the like this, was it 66% for this one? I'm thinking, I really like the idea of this. It's sort of one of these things where it just feels good, where you've got like a lot of one particular terrain. If I press the number 5 key, we can sort of see that there's hills that dominate through here. Again, you do need to really sort of choose your way through, like how are you going to do different things. We've got thick forest there, which has actually got different sorts of stats, for example, than just normal forest. So the entrenchments will be different. The movement will be different through those as well. So anyway, this is the front lines area where you end up sort of playing a very, very tight component of battle, rather than having big sweeping sort of countrywide scenarios, or even continent-wide scenarios. You really are just sort of I'll just go back out to the main menu. You really are just playing in a very, very tight little area. So we just, in that one there, the Battle of the Bulge, you are playing pretty much just the if I just go down to it. So these front lines, the Battle of the Bulge is really just going to be in the Ardennes. So that's pretty much where this one is actually then located, and what it's actually then going and doing. After that one came out, there was another one came out called The Fall of Poland, which is sort of interesting. What this one here is, I think that they took the idea of having other than German forces being the focus, and then did The Fall of Poland, where you played as the Polish forces. Now, of course, Poland really didn't last long. They were heroic in their defeat, but it wasn't actually it wasn't a close thing or anything like that, unfortunately. And I think this is why this one actually only rates 50%. Like, it really doesn't rate very high at all. And I think it's because, like, again, you're playing as a force that doesn't really have a chance, and I think that does impact the way that people actually approach these. Like, if I just go and play this one and just see what this one actually starts off with. So we'll just go and proceed. There we go. So we're getting sort of your briefing coming through this other side, where you've then got to try to defend different areas against the forces coming in. So you've got different sorts of tank squadrons, etc. But in reality, it's about delaying tactics. But again, it's a more intense, sort of more intimate sort of setting. I'll just end the briefing, just so we can sort of see it in through here with what's actually happening. So again, you've got like the different sorts of forces. Of course, the Polish mainly were we're just using cavalry on horseback at that stage as well. A whole range of different bits and pieces in through here. We've got rear infantry back and through this other side, where we've got the Polish infantry sort of stuck in towns, etc., etc. So I think that one of the reasons that this one probably didn't actually rate very highly is simply because you were playing with a force that didn't ultimately have a hope in hell of going anywhere, with what it actually does do. Again, I quite like the maps, I quite like the scale of the maps and what does go on. But yeah, this one didn't have a great reception. Again, from the small amount, I didn't play this one all that much, and but it was. I didn't think it was bad. I do quite like this change of scale. I've got to say, I really do quite like it a lot, more so than the earlier campaigns personally. Actually, when you look at this as well, like this is the only of the war stories featured, sort of directions that they took the engine in. So maybe with the poor reception of Fall of Poland, they thought, look, let's ditch that one. We'll go back to Frontlines, and we'll bring out Krynacia, which is essentially the top of North Africa. So this is actually the early part of the campaign of North Africa. So in the summer of 1940, a German attack on Great Britain seemed imminent. Blah blah blah. Really, the opening stages of this historic conflict, Operation E and Operation Compass, like never before in this double-sided campaign. This rates really, really badly, and I think it's slightly unfair, but I get it. This is a theatre of war that people are very, very passionate about. I think it's of all the theatres of World War II, this is the purest in terms of in actual combat, of where strategy and tactics and supply just played such a pivotal role in a very, very digestible format. And so I think that I certainly, this is my favourite theatre of the war, just simply because of those aspects. I love reading the histories of O'Connor's sort of drive to his initial drive through to sort of reach to try to sort of block off the Italians, things like that. There's just it was a very, very fluid theatre of war that sort of happened over a period of time. But this one goes from 40 to 41, which sort of does, the Operation Compass and these things are quite interesting, but you can play as the Italians. And from everything I've read, the people who actually have downvoted this, have given it a poor rating, have just said playing as the Italians is really, really demoralising, because even if you do very, very well in your part of it, you still end up losing no matter what you do. And so it's sort of, I think that this was, again, not a very well thought through sort of aspect of the game, I guess. I mean, if we go and play it, I don't know if you can choose right from the start. Yeah, here we go. You got command the Italian forces. They launch the ambitious Operation E to take control of British Army in the daring Operation Compass. The fate of North Africa is in your hand. So what I understand happens here, if Operation E had have been successful, if they had have done what they were supposed to do, they were supposed to reach Cairo. Now, I would have assumed, and I haven't played this, but I'm assuming that this one should be a string of scenarios that takes you through to Cairo, and if you take Cairo, you win. And that should be the way it should have worked, because that was all that the Italians had to do. I mean, not all, but they had to essentially go up against a diminished British force initially, and make their way along the coast to then take Cairo, which would have been hard, but that was actually what the operation was about. But none of the commanders really wanted to do it, so they sort of stopped early inside Egypt, and so didn't move any further forward, which then allowed the British to build up and then sort of surround them, and then sort of end up dominating through Operation Compass. So Operation Compass is the opposite. So this case, you can play as the British in the daring Operation Compass, the fate of North Africa. So I would assume that this one actually would rate really highly, because that would be fun to play. Again, I haven't played much of this, which is sort of funny, because I really do love this aspect of the game. But this one does rate, it's the poorest of all of them. In fact, if we just accept this, let's have a look and see. So after months of rumours and speculation, Italy decides to become heavily involved. So it looks like the first one is actually is trying to just stop them from marching forward. So I'm guessing it is actually just the blunting the initial attack. So that's also not the fun bit, I guess, for the British. The British forces, when they sort of after this phase, I'm guessing from that point you are then surrounding. You've got the Battle of Tobruk and stuff like that, or the initial battles anyway, of surrounding up the large Italian forces. Anyway, it sort of didn't really didn't rate with people but I think the main reason is because they were playing as the Italians and didn't like the fact that there was no way really for them to win properly. So which I understand. So that would be That would be demoralising, and so that one there does not rate very highly at all. I guess that's the weakest of all of the DLCs that came in. And again, I haven't really played the Operation Compass one, but that would be the one I'd probably be really interested in playing, just to sort of see how that one does, what it does do and how it performs. Okay, we'll just go back in and have a look now at the timeline again. So we've got the Elite Ghost Division. So it's gone from an absolute dog of 38 out of 100 to the Elite. So this is now a new force, a new sort of grouping that does come through. Panzer Corps Elite in the 29th of May 2025. So just a couple of months after Siren Asia was actually launched, it then actually has the Elite Ghost Division. And these actually are another completely different way of looking at the game. And so you'll find that as we sort of come back through, we've got the Frontlines campaign. So with Battle of the Bulge was okay. People didn't mind that one. Croatia, they really didn't like it. War Stories, they didn't like. Then we actually go into the Elite versions in through here. And so the first one is Ghost Division, and through this other side. So historical campaign covering the battles and engagements of the Wehrmacht 7th Panzer Division. Over the course of 6 years of combat, the 7th Panzer earned an unmatched reputation. So in this case, we end up with the... so this is Rommel's force in the desert, for example. And so it covers from 39 to 45 in 9 different scenarios. Interesting again, like this one rates, it's gone from, the DLC sort of tapering off to suddenly going bang, here we go, we're back with a vengeance, with something that people are enjoying playing. So anyway, that's that particular one through there, and I'm guessing it will start off with the actually would it start, probably would start off with the invasion of just proceed of France, or even Poland maybe. I can't remember how this one starts. There's so much content in here. Let's get Infantry General, accept, and this is Poland. Just end the briefing here. So yeah, it's going to take you from different scenarios through big maps, but again, fairly sort of tight in terms of what they provide. And again, you need to sort of think through the various terrain. If you press number 5, you can sort of see where can the tanks operate, how you're going to get across these rivers, etc., etc. Big area. That looks really cool. No wonder this actually rates so highly. I mean, just overall, it's going to be a lot of content there to play with. That looks very, very cool. And you've then, of course, got the big Panzer divisions as well to sort of rocket your way through. Nicely done. Actually, what is this one? Inception is what the map is called there. All right, so anyway, let's just go back out to the main menu. And then we sort of scroll down a little bit. So we see on the 19th of August of 2025, we have the Frontlines West Wall has now sort of been introduced. New game, campaign. So this is now this is the third of the Frontlines. I must be nervous after the reception of Siren Asia. Anyway, this one rates reasonably well. This is sort of like a bit slightly above par, I think. And so this is actually the invasion of Germany, essentially, as the Allies conclude their liberation of Western Europe. The US forces aim to breach the fortified Siegfried Line along the German border to enter the Reich. And this is just all played out in the autumn of 1944. Again, very, very intimate in terms of what it does provide. 14 scenarios. And again, rates reasonably well. So people actually did enjoy that one as well. And then basically at the end of last year, we end up with the next of the Elite, which then follows, for example, one of the famous divisions through. So the historical campaign covers the events that led to the formation of the Red Army's 1st Guards Division and battles that ensued. So born from the ashes of the devastation inflicted upon the Red Army during Operation Barbarossa, Soviet Guards units were formed from those that not only survived the most brutal combat conditions, but also distinguished themselves while doing so. So in this case, we've got 9 scenarios from 37 through 45. That's interesting. So this one, I think, must have fought in Spain, I would imagine. Let's start again and see where we end up. I have played this a little bit, and I think this is actually... I get confused as to what I've played where, and I think that with this one here, I actually thought the Spanish DLC was much later in the terms of the timeline, and so I was getting confused with the timing, thinking that doesn't look right, and it must be because this one starts off in Spain, and I just thought, no, it's only just come out, like it's only just released. So I'm pretty sure these actually did start fighting in Spain. in this instance. So we'll have a quick look and see. Okay, we'll just go and grab you, accept. And so, yeah, so again, Spanish Republican government, blah, blah, blah. So this is actually just with sort of fighting in these regions. So again, ending the briefing through there. And again, you can really see the transition of the way the maps were generated and created over time. I really love where these later DLCs end up with their maps. And again, this one here is rating, above par with what it's doing, 78, I think it was. I can't read the numbers down below. It's very small on my screen. I've got it on another screen, so I can't actually access it when I'm actually in game like this. But anyway, it rates very, very well. And so this one only just came out like 6 months ago or thereabouts. But again, a pretty cool DLC. Very well received. The reception was again good for a DLC. Yeah, it's cool actually. I'm really liking the focus that they're now moving the game into, and that then brings us really to the conclusion of the DLC timeline, which is the Axis operations, which if I get out of this, which came out just this week, Italy Volume 1. So Allied Operations, Italy Volume 1. And this whole campaign is really the attack on Sicily. I've been playing a few of the scenarios. I'm really thoroughly enjoying it. So I think this one will rate highly again as well. I would assume that this one will be around about the 80 to 85% mark, I would guess, just based on the amount that I have played. I found it very enjoyable. I've really enjoyed the maps, etc., etc. I did a bit more of a deeper dive on this yesterday, if you are interested. Actually, in time of recording, I'm recording this back to back. But anyway, it was released yesterday at the time. So I'll release this one sort of like, so if you look at yesterday's video, you'll then get much more of a deeper dive into what that DLC does provide. So I'm anticipating this one will actually rate pretty highly again as well. I think that what's happened when we actually do look at the timeline, I can bring the timeline back a little bit and sort of scrub it through. We end up with an exceptionally well-received game of it's over 90% at the moment for the base game, which is it thoroughly deserves that. We then start to sort of see Axis operations in the early part of the year where it's focused on the German forces, rating very highly when they do well. Starts to taper off as the war becomes more difficult and the scenarios become more defensive. I think when you look at this, anything that's a lot more of a defensive style scenario doesn't rate as highly as the offensive styles, and so we end up with essentially the Battle of the Bulge is a bit defensive. Axis operations back through here, that one is actually offensive. 58% for 1946 is not too bad. Fall of Poland, 50. I can see that like being not very inspirational to play. 38 there for Cyrenaica, again just a. And that's purely, I think, comes down to being able to play as the Italians. Maybe shouldn't have allowed that to happen, to be honest. Would have possibly been more interesting to actually have covered the initial British advance and then the initial German advance in more depth, more so than the Italian advance. Would have been probably much better received DLC, to be honest, if I'm thinking about it. Then we sort of hit the sweet spot again with the Ghost Division, the First Guards, West Wall performing above average there as well. So I think that we're back on track, and now we've just got literally 2 or 3 days ago, we've got the Allied operations just sort of starting as well. Looking forward to this next big group of DLCs coming where they actually focus on very specific combat rather than it sort of going all over the place. I'm thinking that this will be it'll be much more intimate in terms of the actual battlefield that it presents itself with, which will be fun, I think. I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, that's the end of that aspect. There was something else I was going to talk about. Just let me think about it for a second. That's right, the specials. The game is on special. If you are interested in what you've seen here and think, this looks interesting, it is digestible. It's a game that is very, very approachable. So don't feel like, even though it's sort of like a war game to a degree, it doesn't play like a war game. It's relatively fast to play, and it's as I say before, the level of polish is incredible. When we look at the base game, Panzer Corp 2, as I said before, 83%, very positive rating in through there, and 96% in the last 30 days. that's unheard of with these sort of games, to be honest. That is really, really exceptional. Like it's so rare to see that with like again with this in this genre of games. This is an exceptional game. So really it's unbelievable. And as we sort of have a bit of a look at it, you can see 60% off at the moment. It says it ends on the 29th of May. I think that's going to be the 30th of May for most of you. I'm in Australia, so I actually end up with I'm sort of like a day ahead with these sort of specials, and so essentially I end up with it like it always displays a little bit earlier. So grab it if you don't have it. It is worth getting at 60% off. Well, there's also different bundles as well. And so the DLCs, and I do want to go through how the different DLCs are sort of going on as well. If you wanted to get the frontline bundles, you can then sort of go and get, for example, the Bulge. You got Cyrenatia through there. I would still think that Operation Compass would be fun to play, to be honest. And they've got West Wall in through there as well. So two good games. One game that doesn't rate very highly. In fact, it rates the lowest of everything. We might even have a look and see, like some of these as well. You can get that one there at 40% off. That's it's still like this is Australian dollars, so like that would be around about say 45 US, I guess, somewhere in there. This would be around about say $15-16, I would guess US, if I was guessing at 60% off for the base game. You've then got the Axis Operations bundles as well, so they are selling them as bundles. This is actually getting all of those different DLCs, and some of these rate very, very highly. If we go back to all of everything in through here, the latest one doesn't have any sort of specials. But we're seeing some of the more recent ones at 10% off. Let's go to see all. So if we go to if we just go through from the top through here, so we've got 10% off down to Ghost Division. So that's only $6 to get Ghost Division. I mean, that's for a game that rates as high as what it does, around 90%. That's pretty damn good with what you're sort of getting in through there. Cyrenatia there at 15% off, but still actually was an expensive game to start with. I would sort of avoid that just based on what people are reporting on that one through there. Fall of Poland with War Stories I would avoid as well, even though it's 15% off. The others you're getting off at 20% for the Frontlines Bulge. That was good. Then you've got the Axis Operations back in through here. That one there is expensive, but it's still 25% off. Maybe that's one of the reasons that people actually didn't really enjoy that one. I'm guessing a lot of work went into building this alternate history for Axis Operations. Maybe you sort of give that one a miss, but some of the others there at $10. Certainly the early ones, if you are playing from the German perspective, I think that 41, 40 probably are must-haves, maybe even 39. Those three there would be really cool, just based on what people are sort of saying about it. Spanish Civil War, again, I quite enjoyed that. Anyway, there's a whole range of different sort of specials there. DLCs up to 25% off. Base game though at 60% off. Whoops. Stop that. Stop the noise. Okay, so anyway, that's where we are with this. But the base game, it really is exceptional. So I'm going to leave it there, guys. Thanks for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoy this sort of content. I enjoy making these timelines of different histories of games and things like that. I enjoy it immensely. Let me know if it's something that you enjoy seeing as well, because like the history of games is just phenomenal. Even just with the combination of how things do sort of work, and even often the time scales between, I didn't even realize just how much time had gone between Panzer General and then the first of the Panzer Corps. It's really a very, very long period of time, and for this to be the spiritual successor of that old game and to do it so well, it's just it's great. It's really, really cool to sort of do deep dives into the history of these sorts of games. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.